Okay, let's get on with our next guest tonight. Our next guest is Clarissa Vazquez. She's a Colorado native and avid paranormal investigator. After serving in the U.S. Air Force and having her first paranormal experience while enlisted, she returned to Colorado and later founded the Colorado Coalition of Paranormal Investigators in 2004. Her dedication as a research of paranormal phenomena led her to her subsequent calling as a minister. She's a world-renowned writer. She's written several books: Ghosts of the Heart, A Paranormal Investigator's Journey, Ghost Hunting in Colorado, No Monsters Here, Demons of the Coven, Ghosts in the Bible, which is going to be Ghosts in the Bible, which is going to be released shortly, I believe. We will find out. She's been on Coast to Coast, a lot of other shows, Darkness on the Edge of Town with Dave Schrader, and I believe she has her own paranormal talk radio program too. We're going to be talking about that as much as we can with Clarissa. We'll talk about what she's doing there. Okay, without any further delay, let's get her on the line. Clarissa, good evening. Welcome to K-Talk and Fringe Radio. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Are you somewhere where it's warm, I hope?
Well, yes and no. I'm inside a warm hotel room in cold and rainy Flagstaff, Arizona right now.
Oh, okay. Well, it is definitely cold and windy here in the Intermountain West in Salt Lake City tonight. It went from what I would really call summer to winter in a matter of hours this afternoon.
I would agree with that. I would definitely agree with that. In our travels from Colorado to Flagstaff today, in the 12 hours that we were in the car, we went from, warm temperatures, a little bit of rain drizzle to just cold wind, rain.
Oh, I know.
Ooh, winter has hit Arizona.
Oh, it has. It has. Clarissa, it's an honor to have you on the program here tonight. Why don't you give our listeners, I want to talk about all your books and your new book that's coming out here real soon. So much, just so interesting. How did you get into this? Why don't you give us a little bit of the backstory? How did this all kind of come together for you to, of course I read your bio, but how did it all come together for you to start digging into the paranormal stuff?
Well, many moons ago, I was stationed at an Air Force base just north of UPAC, and I had my first experience with what I would...
Air Force Base?
That would be Hill Air Force Base, okay. Yes, only when you're enlisted there, when you're stationed there, you don't spell it with an I, you spell it with an E. And for good reason.
I heard it's Orrin Hatch's favorite, but all right, go ahead.
And being a very low-ranking airman on the proverbial totem pole at the time, the Air Force Base was in the process of converting their morgue facility into a physical therapy department. And I was a very low-ranking airman on that totem pole, and so I was tasked with helping with the cleanup of that facility during the renovation process. And I returned from a lunch break and was in this gutted-out basement area and saw a gentleman wearing 1960s, 1970s era combat fatigues, the olive drab fatigues. He had a flat-top haircut, very clean cut, but he just looked out of place. His uniform was a very stark contrast from my camouflage battle dress uniform. And I asked him if there was something I could help him with, and he looked at me, and then he looked away and walked through a cinder block wall.
Wow.
That's what I said. And I wasn't scared or frightened by it. I was actually pretty excited about it. He was very three-dimensional. He was not transparent or wispy, or, he wasn't a shadow figure or anything of that nature. And, so I placed a very excited phone call to my mother that night. You're not going to believe what I just saw. And that incident right there really it piqued my curiosity.
Right.
And so I started reading every book I could get my hands on. Televisions were inundated with reality TV shows about ghost hunting and paranormal investigation. The Internet was in its infancy. I'm dating myself now. So, I was left with reading books by, some of the pioneers in the field, like Hans Holzer, Ed Warren, people like that. And, just one thing led to another. I got more and more curious, started going and playing with a Polaroid camera and an analog tape recorder. And again, I'm dating myself by talking about the equipment that I used at the time. But, I eventually, for lack of a better explanation, I eventually got good at what I was doing. And people started calling me up, hey, my friend's house, has some weird stuff going on. Can you take a look? And that led to getting calls from complete strangers going, I think there's something going on in my home or my business. And my good friend, Jade Oplenop, he and I, at the time, we said, this is getting bigger than either of us anticipated. This is becoming more of a hobby. And so in 2004, we made the leap and founded CCPI, the Colorado Coalition of Paranormal Investigators. And that was 10 years ago that we officially launched the organization. And that led to other callings. That led to my attending of seminary school and becoming ordained as a non-denominational minister. That led to countless books. You mentioned a few of them on the air at the beginning, at the introduction, and numerous speaking engagements. I've got a full itinerary for what's left of this year, and next year starting to book up fast. And so I'm just, there's no rest for the wicked. And it all started with a ghost at Hill Air Force Base.
That walked through a concrete wall.
Who walked through a cinder block wall, in a former morgue.
It's so interesting, Clarissa, because, being in the military, you've got the discipline of the military. Was that, did that had to just blow you away to see that?
It did. Because your military training, especially when you're fresh out of basic training. I was fresh out of basic training, fresh out of technical school. I was a grunt. I didn't have stripes yet. That's how fresh out of the schoolhouse I was. You're taught to look at things very rationally, very critically. Everything is black and white. There is no gray area.
Right.
And so to see something like that, you really want to start jumping up and down, but then your military bearing kicks in and you're going, oh, okay, gotta stay calm, gotta stay cool and accept it for what it is. But, on the inside, you're doing backflips.
Well, I could imagine because, again, with all the discipline, did you do any research, or did you ever have the opportunity to research who this gentleman was?
I did not have the opportunity to do any of that research. I didn't dare tell my superiors what I had seen. I was fresh out of the schoolhouse. I was scared to death that they were going to send me for a psych evaluation.
Right.
If I went in and, if I started telling people, hey, I saw a ghost, because it was still very taboo at the time. This was before people were coming forward and saying, yes, I'm having these experiences. People were still afraid to talk about what they were seeing and what they were experiencing. Whereas today, thanks to the reality TV shows and the internet and the plethora of books on ghosts and spirits that are available now, that some of that stigma has been removed and people are more comfortable discussing what they are seeing and what they are experiencing. Right,
exactly. Is Hill Air Force Base, or Hell Air Force Base as you call it, is it known, or does it have a history or an ongoing situation over there of paranormal activity?
You hear rumors, but those rumors are pretty much the same for any military installation.
Right.
There appears to be some form of geographic psychic trauma at every military installation. And it's the same type of rumors, in hospitals and mortuaries and things of that nature, more specifically hospitals, because the the chances for GPT are higher at locations like that, where you've got more deaths are more common. But military installations, all of them have their own ghost lore and legends. So as far as Hill being unique, I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, very, very interesting. Did it kind of scare you seeing that thing, that person?
No, not when it happened. I think had he been transparent or wispy or floating,
right,
or a shadow, I think that probably would have unnerved me. But I was more curious than anything else. It didn't dawn on me until afterwards that I should have been scared, because again, he was very three-dimensional. He was very tangible. He looked just as real as you or I would look if we were standing face to face having a conversation. It wasn't until he walked through that cinder block wall that I went, "Whoa, something's not right."
Right. Yeah. Wow. Very, very interesting. Let me ask you, just a little change of subject. I know your specialty is paranormal, but being that you reside in Colorado, my understanding is there has been a ton, and literally a ton, of UFO activity going on. Are you hearing about that through your channels and through the people you deal with in your state?
I am hearing about it. At this time, myself and my organization, we don't research the ufology side.
Okay.
In fact, I don't like to refer to myself as a paranormal investigator, although that's the popular term. I like to refer to myself as an afterlife researcher.
Okay.
I don't even like the term ghost hunter, because that makes it sound like I'm dressed like Elmer Fudd traipsing around going, "Be very, very quiet, I'm hunting ghosts." So I prefer the term afterlife researcher. Of course, my colleagues in the state that have ufology departments and crypto departments, there's chatter, between the groups and stuff, and when something really interesting comes down the pike, it winds up in my inbox from an affiliate organization, and I'm sitting there going, "Wow, that's really cool. I'm happy for you guys. Doesn't apply to me, but great."
Right.
So yeah, there have been a number of UFO sightings recently. There have also been a number of Bigfoot sightings recently. So Colorado right now is a paranormal hotbed.
Yeah, it is. It is. Well, I know in the here in Salt Lake City, we have a new director for MUFON. Her name is Erica Lucas. We've had her on the show, and I email with her frequently. And there has just been so many things. The actual news agencies have captured so much here, and they're actually putting it on television. And we're getting a lot of stuff through MUFON and other organizations, again, with these sightings, these big orbs in the sky and stuff. And I mean, it seems like it's really, really on the rise. It seems like the past couple of months there's just been a lot of activity. Do you ever think at the end of the day, Clarissa, that maybe it's all kind of tied together?
Sure, it can all be tied together. Anything is possible. It leaves you to wonder, though, if the increase in reports, if that's actually an increase in activity or it's just an increase in people reporting it. Because like with the ghostly phenomena, the stigma attached to UFO sightings or even abductions, to get really radical, that stigma is being removed. And so more people they're becoming more comfortable talking about it. So is it a fact of heightened activity or increased activity? Maybe. Is it as a result of people being more comfortable talking about their experiences? Possibly. Is it attention seekers? When the ghost hunting fad just exploded several years ago, everybody was seeing ghosts. Everything was a ghost. Everything was paranormal. And through dedication and research, we've come to learn that not every dust orb is a ghost. Not every shadow is a ghost. Not every knock and bang and sound that you hear is a ghost. And so I think that's where the ufology department is right now. That they're weeding through the reports and going, okay, is this a genuine unidentified flying object, or is it matrixing? Is it swamp gas? Is it an airplane? Is it a satellite? Is it, what is it?
Exactly. No, that's very true, and that's a very true statement. That's a very good point, because people are starting to look up more. They're starting to look up in the sky, and was that stuff always there? But we just never noticed it.
Right.
Let's talk about some of your books and some of the stuff you do. Now, you've got a new book coming out in a couple of weeks, Phantom Trains and Haunted Rails of the U.S.
Yes, and actually I got the word yesterday. They're releasing it early. It'll be out early this week.
Cool. So let's talk. Can we talk about it?
Absolutely. Let's talk about it.
Phantom Trains. Go ahead.
Phantom Trains and Haunted Rails of the U.S. I documented 37 locations in 21 states where reports of either phantom trains or haunted train tracks. And I did everything from the Chicago ghost train that was actually very recent. I think it was last year. That was actually not ghostly at all. It was not paranormal at all. It was actually human error that led to this train traveling by itself for several miles and switching tracks and eventually colliding with another train. But I also talk about the ghost train the ghost children in San Antonio, Texas, where people park their cars, put them in neutral, and allegedly these cars are pushed uphill over the tracks by children that were reported to have died in a train versus school bus accident.
Yes.
Now, both of those incidences have been debunked.
Okay. I know. Didn't Factor Fake or Ben Hansen's group do a thing?
Yeah. Factor Fake did go out there, and they determined that it's an optical illusion that you're being pushed uphill. It's actually at a 2% downgrade.
Okay.
And because of the tree line and everything, it's an optical illusion that you're being pushed uphill. People put baby powder or flour or what have you on the backs of their bumpers, and then after the car finishes rolling, they get out and they look, and there's fingerprints on the back bumpers of the car, and what they're finding is that whatever powder was applied to the bumpers absorbed the oils from fingertips. So the last time you closed your trunk or touched your back bumper or what have you, the powder was absorbing those oils, thereby leaving those fingerprints.
So there's no little kids pushing anything?
No, and there's also no historical records at all of a train versus bus accident at that location.
Okay.
But there are other locations that I did document in this book that have not been debunked. There are a lot of ghost trains. In fact, there's one in Clearfield, Utah, Pat.
Okay.
That Steed's Pond in Clearfield, Utah, where several people were hit by trains. Either children from the nearby school were playing too close to the tracks, or people who decided to commit suicide by train. And there are a lot of reports of children crying, people screaming, wet footprints or puddles on the walking path. The tracks have been removed, and there's a walking path there where the tracks used to be. And so right there at Steed's Pond, along that walking path, there's a lot of ghostly activity where those train tracks used to be.
So are people claiming to see the train?
At that location, no.
Okay.
There are other locations where people claim to see the trains, or they hear the train whistle, things of that nature. There are existing locomotives with phantom hitchhikers on them. The stories they're varied as far as the phenomena, but the history on all of them is just fantastic.
Yeah, one thing I heard about, and I don't know if you're, it sounds like for Utah, this is the one story that or the one subject you touched on, but like one thing that we hear about here in Utah is years ago, of course, there were many railroads that came through that came through up in northern Utah, up through Tremont and stuff. A lot of the rails are no longer there, but way back when, a lot of those trains carried gold and gold coin and stuff. And there was a lot of robberies that took place. A lot of people were killed. Trains were, stopped at basically at gunpoint. You get a lot of treasure hunters here in town that still go out and scour those rural areas where those trains used to be. They say there's bags of gold hidden in different places. Do you tend to, maybe I'm digressing a little bit too much, but do you tend to get activity as far as maybe paranormal, or if we want to call it haunted activity, around train sites where, people were killed or death or bad things happened?
There have been a lot of reports of especially the phantom tracks where people were killed, whether it was a train crash or a vehicle versus train collision, or even someone intentionally or accidentally stepping in front of a moving locomotive. And so those are the most common phantom train instances. But there are others, such as the Dread 107, which is in Colorado, where this locomotive had, during its lifespan, and I say lifespan because it was not on the rails very long, had 3 different accidents. All 3 of those accidents involved numerous fatalities. And that locomotive, even though the Denver and Rio Grande Railroad eventually scrapped the engine, because just with almost any other occupation, there's a lot of superstition among the railroads. There were no engineers, no conductors that would have any affiliation with the Dread 107. So the Denver and Rio Grande eventually scrapped that locomotive, but its whistle can still be heard in a couple of the canyons, particularly where the Gunnison River and the Colorado River intersect. That locomotive's whistle can still be heard.
Interesting. So this was a train that had been involved with a lot of death. Very, very interesting. Do you write about, or the one thing that I find really fascinating is like the Gettysburg is probably one of the most famous places where people claim to see these phantom troops of soldiers. They see something, they think it looks like, I know it's always been mistaken for people thinking that maybe it's some sort of reenactment, and then it kind of fades to black and it's gone. Do you are there any situations or stories out there, Clarissa, on trains that people see and they vanish in front of them, or were there at one time and maybe something happened, the tracks are gone, the trains are long gone, but people still see the locomotives?
There are a couple of documented cases with phenomena like that. Most recently, I guess, would be the case in North Carolina, and I don't remember exactly where in North Carolina, but there was a locomotive crash, and on the anniversary of that crash, which is consistent with residual haunting activity, as well as geographic psychic trauma, on the anniversary of that crash, the locomotive is said to cross the trestle where it crashed. And back in 2010, a group of investigators were on the trestle trying to capture footage of this locomotive as it made its anniversary run. And 2 of the investigators were actually struck and killed by an actual train.
Interesting.
And they were trying to pull a Ghostbusters thing, and have the train, run through them. And it was a real train, and 2 investigators lost their lives. Wow.
Interesting stuff. Unique stuff, without a doubt.
Yeah. And so, like I said, the stories, they're varied as far as the phenomena. They're varied as far as the history. But, they're all really exciting. And I had so much fun writing that book.
It's interesting. the hobby, the train enthusiast hobby, I didn't realize how many, when I was young, and something that I've always enjoyed my whole life, when I was younger, I was real heavy into model railroading, when I lived back at home, and then, life goes on, you get married, you get a family, and stuff like that kind of goes by the wayside. I didn't realize how many people, though, are into train enthusiasts out there that are into, monitoring when different types of trains, locomotives, what have you, come through different parts of town and go out and just shoot thousands and thousands of photographs, and how many train clubs are out there. This has got to be a great book for anyone that has an interest in railroading.
Well, and that was actually what inspired the book. My son, who is 13 now, when he was younger, was just absolutely obsessed with trains. Any kind of train tracks, broken down boxcars, he would just squeal with delight. And then my brother is actually a rail fan. And there's a name for these people that go out and shoot the hours of footage.
Really?
And take the thousands. Yeah, they're called rail fans.
Huh.
And, and he has his model trains and everything. And, I swear he can smell train tracks a mile away. But when I was looking for a Christmas present for my son and my brother that would incorporate their love for trains along with their love for ghosts, which they share with me, and I couldn't find any nonfiction books that really met my criteria. There are plenty of fiction books out there, but I couldn't find any nonfiction books. And so I went, oh, well, that's a bummer. And about 20 minutes later, I went, well, why don't I write a book?
Right.
And so I did, and that's how Phantom Trains came to be.
Did you travel all over the country to gather the stories, or did you just pull a lot of research, or did you actually go out in the field and dig into some of this stuff?
A little bit of all of it.
Yeah.
Mostly it was doing research, making phone calls, surfing the internet, reading books. But there were a few locations I was able to travel to, make phone calls to the historical societies, things of that nature.
Gotcha.
With my busy touring and lecturing schedule, it was really difficult for me to travel to 21 states and go check these places out for myself.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Fringe Radio. Our guest tonight, Clarissa Vazquez. Clarissa, thank you again for taking time out of your Saturday night to be here with us.
Oh, the pleasure is mine.
Are you down at a convention in Arizona right now by chance, or are you just taking vacation?
No. Well, it's business and pleasure. I'm down on vacation, but I'm also doing research for another book idea that's swimming around in my head.
Cool, very cool. Bill from upstate New York writes, "This is Clarissa. Could some of these trains be seen as some sort of type of time anomaly, like a rift in the fabric of time and space?"
It's possible, as with any kind of residual haunting. It's possible that some of the phantom trains could be the result of a time rift or a time warp. Again, because paranormal investigation as a whole is still in its infancy. Granted,
right.
We've been at it for well over 100 years now, since the spiritualist movement. But it's still in its infancy. We don't have. We only have a fraction of the answers that we're seeking. And so anything's possible.
Yeah. It's I've been on the fence with with some of the programs that are out there. It seemed like we got a little taste of the paranormal world on TV, through the cable providers, of course, through the cable channels. And then everybody was doing a show, and it got kind of crazy. But I do think, and I don't know if you agree, but I think it definitely educated people, and it got people thinking about stuff, and it especially got people to be more open-minded about things and talk more about it and not suppress things and Not say, wow, I just saw something, or kind of like what you experienced up at the Air Force Base. Now you come out and talk about it. I think it definitely opens people's eyes and gets others to at least consider, what they saw. It wasn't craziness. It wasn't their imagination. There might have been something there.
Absolutely. And whether you agree with the shows that are on television or not, whether you believe that they're real or they're scripted, that's up to the individual viewer. But the one thing that they all have in common is that they have helped to remove the stigma attached to having these experiences.
Right. Where can our listeners get your book? And we're going to talk about your other books here tonight, but where can they get Phantom Trains and Haunted Rails of the U.S.?
Phantom Trains and Haunted Rails of the U.S. Is expected to be out either Monday or Tuesday of this week, and it will be available on Amazon. You can also purchase it through my website, which is ClarissaVazquez.com, and that's Clarissa with one R and two S's, and it's Vazquez. The Puerto Rican spelling and pronunciation. Darn my ex-husband.
Okay, sounds good. Let's talk about some of your other books. Well, before we get into your books, I was looking at your website, and people can go out there and check it out. It's a great site. There's a lot of stuff out there. You travel around quite a bit and go to quite a lot of these different Paracons, I see.
I do. I'm becoming Little Miss Popularity, I think. I'm being more and more frequently asked to speak at conferences. The last one that I did was Scarefest in Lexington, Kentucky, and that one was a lot of fun. Believe it or not, I was a VIP. I got to go and have lunch with the people from TV and from the movies and stuff. It was very surreal for me. Mm-hmm. To go, oh my gosh, I'm having lunch with Sean Astin, and the way I was treated at that particular event was it was mind blowing to me.
These cons, here in Salt Lake City, and I would assume that Scarefest, because in looking at the website, it's a horror and paranormal convention, so obviously it brings out people that love, the horror genre, which I do. More of the old B, all the B movies, stuff out of the 60s and 70s and earlier than that. But these cons are just going crazy, Clarissa. I mean, they're here in Salt Lake City. We had our first Comic-Con a year ago, and now we've had two since, and 100,000 plus people through the door. I've had the honor to go to these, and I go in, with a press pass. We get in for about 3-4 hours, and I've had enough. But it's just crazy, the people that are into this.
Yeah, imagine doing one for 3 days.
Oh man. Yeah, it is. When you get there, first of all, when you get there early on, it's like, well, okay, this isn't too bad. The press pass allows you to kind of walk around and meet the vendors and meet some of the people, and it's crowded. And then when, I was telling my wife, it's like the gates of hell opening up, because all these people, I mean, it's crazy. It's not crazy. It's great to see the enthusiasm.
It really is. It's great to see the enthusiasm. And what really blew my mind about Scarefest, number one, it is the largest horror and Paracon in the country. This year alone, I've had the privilege of speaking at the longest running and the largest. Mm-hmm. I spoke at Ghost Stock back in March, and then I was at Scarefest just a few weeks ago. And a lot of these conferences, they will run simultaneous lectures. And so I'm looking at the lecture schedule, checking in, going, okay, where am I speaking, when am I speaking? And I look and I see that my presentation on Phantom Hitchhikers is going up against John Zaffis talking about haunted objects. Mm-hmm. And I'm going, well, nobody's going to show up to listen to me. But believe it or not, there were well over 50 people that showed up to listen to me talk about, Phantom Hitchhikers instead of, Johnny Zaffis talking about haunted objects. I was blown away. And that's the the great thing about these conferences is, you kind of get to pick and choose, who you want to see, what you want to listen to, what do you want to learn about, what trips your trigger.
Right. No, well, again, the interest is there's just so much interest in these subjects. I think the horror genre, again, it's just like railfan stuff. I mean, people that are there's so many different hobbies, there's so many things going on. Some people are just into the horror so much, but the paranormal thing, I think, is so cool, and again, congratulations on being invited to that to talk about this stuff, because again, people crave this; they want to know about it.
Well, thanks. It's been an honor for me, and again, it's been very surreal. When these invitations first started coming in, I called my brother, who is my best friend, and I'm going, why do they want to talk to me? I don't have a TV show. I'm small potatoes, and he shut me up in mid-sentence. He says, when are you going to realize that you're not small potatoes?
Mm-hmm.
People recognize that you're very knowledgeable, you're very sensible, and you know what you're talking about, and you present it well. He says, when is that going to get through your thick red-headed skull? And he has a way of putting things so that I understand them.
No, it's a lot of fun, and again, you bring a wealth of knowledge to the table. With your group in Colorado, I mean, do you guys, are you based out of Denver, or where's your group based out of, or do you cover all the state?
At present, we cover western Colorado and eastern Utah.
Okay.
Which is an area that is not saturated. The Denver area, Colorado Springs, Pueblo, those areas are just saturated with groups. It's like trying to start a new investigation team in New England.
Mm-hmm.
There are just so many there, it's all saturated. And so we have, for the last 10 years, covered western Colorado and eastern Utah, even a little bit of New Mexico and Wyoming. And by doing that, we're providing a great service to those communities, but we're also providing relief to the organizations over in the Denver area that get calls, over in our neighborhood, and they say, it's 4 hours for us to come to you, but we know of a great team, that's closer. And so we get those referrals all the time.
Do you get a lot of stuff here out of Utah? Is there a lot of course, here in Salt Lake City, we've got a lot of paranormal research teams up this way.
Mm-hmm.
But they stop at about Provo, and that's it. It's pretty sparse from there down, but there's all these. Matter of fact, I was just down in Cedar City, Utah this week for business, for the majority of the week, and a lot of old places down there, a lot of creepy old places through southern and eastern Utah. I mean, there's a lot of these old towns that have been around forever.
We get called frequently to areas like Vernal, Green River, Moab, Monticello, those areas. There's a lot of Native American history in those areas, and so the natives are really quick to dismiss what's going on, and so we find that it's the, I don't want to say the white people, but it's the non-natives that are really spooked and unnerved by what's going on in those areas. The indigenous people are they're accustomed to things like that. They have their spirit guides and things of that nature. They're really desensitized, and they're groomed to accept that. But people who did not grow up with those traditions and did not have those beliefs and theories instilled in them from birth, are the ones that, they're really unnerved by it. And so those are the people that are calling us going, hey, something's going on in my house, something's going on in my business, something's going on in my neighborhood. Can you come and check it out?
Right.
And so, like I said, a lot of cases in Vernal, Green River, Moab, the northeastern area of the state.
Well, I've always I've had many of the paranormal research teams up here in Utah in the studio and on the phone. And the one thing that I always, my hat's off to you and people that do because I'm not a paranormal researcher by any means. It interests me, but I'm not involved with any one team. I've had many teams ask me to come with them and do an investigation. But I kind of feel that you guys are, at least with the homes, maybe not in, maybe here in Ogden, Utah, they've got the Union Station, and there's a lot of different places that that the activity seems to be high. But when it comes to going in people's homes, my hat's off to you, because I know that most people, I'd say 99% of the people that get involved with these organizations, I know you're not getting any money for it. It's all your own time, your own equipment, and you're there to try to help people solve a problem. And some of these people are, I've heard the stories. Some of these people are literally terrified, and it's not a hobby by any means. It's a form of relief for some people.
Absolutely. And as you touched upon just a few seconds ago, the serious researchers are the ones that are out there. They're the ones that are sweating it out night and day, trying to help these people who are at the end of their rope to the point where they are going to call perfect strangers into their homes.
Right.
They're inviting perfect strangers into their homes at night because they are so terrified. And the legitimate researchers, the ones that are in it for either the scientific research or for the satisfaction of helping people, those are the ones that are sweating it out in the trenches. Those are the ones that are not charging money to do it. In this business, you've got to get creative about it. You've got to find a way to financially support your habit. I don't even call it a hobby anymore. I call it a habit.
Sure.
And so that's, like with myself, I write books.
Right.
And I write about what I know best, and that is ghosts.
Clarissa, we got to take a quick NBC news break. Can we keep you for a little more after the news?
Of course.